Have you ever stopped to think that only 5% of who we are is actually conscious? What if I told you there is a proven way to reprogram your mind and completely transform your reality? In this eye-opening video, we will explore how meditation can be the key to unlocking your full potential. Based on the revolutionary teachings of Joe Dispenza, you will discover how to transcend your limited self and create a new version of yourself, healthier, more fulfilled, and vibrant. If you are ready to let go of old patterns and embrace profound transformation, this video is for you. Prepare to expand your consciousness and change your life forever. Have you ever stopped to think that 95% of who you are today is a program from the past? In our daily lives, we're so stuck in habits and emotions that we don't even realize how much they limit us. But what if I told you that meditation, as Joe Dispenza teaches, could be the key to unlocking a new reality? Imagine being able to reprogram your mind and emotions, transforming not just how you think, but who you truly are. In today's video, we'll explore the power of meditation and how it can take you from an old, tired self to a renewed, vibrant one. Exactly as Joe Dispenza describes in his teachings, the effects of meditation and its impact on the mind can be explained simply. Meditation implies a process of transformation. Imagine there's an old you and a new you. It's not about changing overnight, but going through a process of transformation. 95% of who we are at 35 is made up of subconscious behaviors, automatic habits, emotional reactions, perceptions, and attitudes. That's 95% programmed. To initiate change, we need to activate 5% of our conscious mind. You can try to think positively all you want, but if you feel negativity, that can be an obstacle, especially if you've felt this way for the last 30 years. Often the mind and body are in disagreement. You might have the best vision board in the world, full of everything you desire, but if you don't feel worthy, your body and mind will oppose that idea. The goal is to recondition the body to align with a new mindset. Here's the old you, and here's the new you. Change begins the moment you decide to stop thinking in one way to act and feel differently. This immerses you in the river of change. The hardest part of this transformation is avoiding repeating yesterday's decisions. We generate between 60,000 and 70,000 thoughts per day, 90% of which are identical to those from the day before. The same thoughts lead to the same decisions, which in turn generate the same behaviors, creating similar experiences that provoke the same emotions. These emotions influence our thoughts over and over again, and our biology, neural circuits, neurochemistry, neurohormones, and even gene expression remains unchanged. There's a principle in neuroscience that says neurons that fire together wire together. If you keep thinking the same way, making the same decisions, and living the same experiences, you're forming neural networks and patterns that reinforce that familiar feeling we call self. This connects your brain to a very limited reality. That becomes your identity. It's like enclosing your brain in a box. Although the box doesn't exist physically, it's the result of fixed neural connections, thoughts, behaviors, and emotions through repetition. Therefore, how you think, act, and feel defines what we call personality. Your personality, in turn, creates your personal reality. That's it. If you want to create a new personal reality and a different life, you need to transform your personality. This involves reflecting on your thought patterns and modifying them. You must become aware of your unconscious habits, behaviors, and what you say and do, making the necessary changes. It's also crucial to observe the emotions that anchor you to the past and decide whether these emotions should be part of your future. Most people try to forge a new personal reality without changing their personality, which isn't effective. It's essential to become a distinct person. Meditation in this context means becoming familiar with yourself. When you meditate, you observe the thoughts operating in the background of your consciousness. Often, we're so distracted by our surroundings that we don't notice these thoughts. Meditating is an opportunity to know yourself better, to understand your impulses and tendencies. Your body may want to move and act, but you train it to remain still, recognizing that you are the mind, not the body. Thus, you bring awareness to these conscious behaviors and familiarize yourself with them. This meditation process helps you get to know yourself. If you can observe the emotions that drag you into negativity, you can register them without acting on them. This act of observation means you've stepped out of the habitual program. You become the consciousness observing the program, starting to objectify your subjective self. You see yourself from an external perspective, meaning you're no longer tied to your old self. In its place, your pure consciousness observes. This is the first step in the meditation process. We must shine a light in the darkness, becoming aware of how little conscious we've been, allowing unobserved thoughts, behaviors, or uncontrolled emotions to pass by unnoticed. If you sit down to meditate and ask yourself about compassion, how to improve, or how to change your life, observe your thoughts and how they relate to your mind. You begin to examine the behaviors you need to live this new life, and the act of mentally rehearsing starts to transform your brain, moving you from living in the past to projecting into the future. In other words, by practicing mental rehearsal, your brain adapts to the idea that this experience has already occurred. You're installing new software in your brain that prepares you for the future. If you repeat this enough, it will become familiar. If you can cultivate elevated emotions before the experience happens, then although the materialist waits for wealth to make them feel abundance, the quantum model is based on creating that effect. You experience your worth and abundance before they occur. If you can reproduce this elevated emotion, whether of healing or fullness, and do it repeatedly, that emotion will become familiar. The process of change in this meditative model requires unlearning and relearning. It's an effort to break free from the old habit of self and reinvent yourself. Neuroscience supports this transformation, establishing new synaptic connections and reconnecting while releasing stored emotions in the body and conditioning the body to a new mind and new emotions. It's not about activating the same genes in the same way, but about activating new genes in new ways. You must release the energy of the past to invest in the future. Using the meditation model is crucial for people to disconnect from their external environment by closing their eyes and eliminating distractions from the world around them, people, objects, and places. Your brain waves will begin to transform. This will make you pay less attention to the outside world. When your eyes and ears aren't receiving as many stimuli and there's soft background music, you'll start focusing more on your thoughts than on what's happening outside. If you sit in silence and train your body to be in a state of calm without experiencing the same events that trigger the same emotions, you're telling your body that you're no longer just a body, you're the mind. By stopping thinking about a predictable future or a known past and being present in the now, your inner world becomes more real than the outer world. This is the moment when you can start making significant changes in your personal physiology. In our research, we've measured over 3,500 brains during meditation, and I can confidently say you reach your best state when you forget yourself, when you transcend your identity, when you become nobody, nothing, without time or space. You transform into pure consciousness, ceasing to live as a body in the environment and time. It's in this state of consciousness that you can change your brain and body in extraordinary ways. Now we know how to achieve this, and we need to turn it into a skill. Many people spend most of their lives waiting for something to change, wishing, yearning, and praying for transformation. What we teach isn't just to pray, but to make your prayers come true. We want you to finish your meditations feeling that your desires have already been fulfilled. When you combine a clear intention about the future with an elevated emotion, you're literally transforming your energy, your brain chemistry, and how your brain functions. This also influences your genetic expression, turning you into another person. It may take months for a disease to appear, but we've repeatedly observed that when people return to a certain level of consciousness, the disease disappears. It seems that the illness belongs to the old personality, but now they're different individuals. If we haven't witnessed enough cases to understand that when people reach an internal state of fullness and satisfaction with who they are, they don't worry about illness. It's in those moments that it disappears. Always remember, the goal of meditation is to transcend the analytical mind. What separates the conscious mind from the subconscious is precisely this analytical mind. When we're dominated by stress hormones, the resulting chemical cocktail makes our brain excessively analytical. The problem many people face is that when experiencing an emotional reaction, they tend to evaluate their life through that emotion. That emotion is an echo of the past, and stress hormones can lead you to believe that the external world is more real than your inner world. Stress throws the brain out of balance. When you feel stressed, your attention focuses on objects, people, and your surroundings, because that's where you perceive danger. At these moments, you worry about your body and think you must survive by protecting it. Living under the influence of stress hormones makes us focus on three aspects: our environment, our body, and time. This makes us materialistic and conditions our perception of reality, limiting what we capture with our senses. We start believing that the external world is more authentic than the internal and try to predict the future based on past experiences. This leads us to a mental imbalance. When the brain is exposed to these chemicals, an overexcitation occurs. In this overexcitation, you convince yourself that what you see is reality. Why would you open your heart and trust if you're aware of dangers at every step? Why would you want to learn if you always have to fight or hide? In the Western world, more than 70% of people live under some kind of stress. Repeating this cycle causes neural networks to fragment, leading to incoherence in the brain. If our brain is imbalanced, we will be too. At the same time, the heart, which has its own intelligence and way of functioning, begins to act incoherently, affecting our body by sending wrong signals. When you meditate and disconnect from your surroundings and transcend beyond your body, your inner world becomes more real than the outer world. When you can forget that you're a man or a woman or any label that defines you, whether it's your job, marital status, or diet, you detach from your identity, your body, and the things you possess. In that instant, you forget time, and it's as if your ego and personality fade away. When this happens, the different parts of the brain that were previously fragmented begin to synchronize. What aligns in the brain establishes connections between distinct neuron communities, organizing themselves into coherence. You feel more complete and authentic. At the same time, the energy stored in the survival centers ignites towards the heart, making you fall in love with the present moment and connect with something greater. When we live under the dominion of stress hormones and define our reality through our senses, we disconnect from possibility. We believe we're isolated from everything, inhabiting a realm where our reality is limited to what we can see, hear, touch, or feel. There's nothing of that. What the chemicals do is different. When the energy moves towards the heart, it starts generating a powerful magnetic field. Living under the influence of stress chemicals distances you from this vital field surrounding your body, transforming you into more matter and less energy. As this field shrinks, you become more particles and fewer waves, and that's the problem. When people are materialistic, They try to change matter, which takes time to achieve their goals, since they must drag their bodies through space repeatedly, trying to force results, predict, or control instinctively because they're trying to influence matter from their material nature. However, when the energy moves towards your center and the field around your body expands, you're not just drawing energy from that field, you're also contributing to it. When the heart becomes coherent, it starts beating rhythmically and organizing itself, similar to how a stone thrown into water creates waves. If you can maintain that state, it's like throwing more stones, producing bigger and bigger waves that propagate in the energy field. If you can feel that depth completely, you're throwing bigger stones into the water, generating more significant waves. All energy is frequency, and each frequency carries information. If you focus your intention on what you desire and combine it with that elevated emotion, you'll start emitting a new signal in the field. What you transmit will become your reality. And the longer you maintain your consciousness in that energy, the more you attract the future to you, collapsing time and space. You're creating from a realm that transcends matter. In this realm, you're more energy than matter. When this happens, the brain and heart become more coherent. As the heart organizes and feels in tune, it sends deep signals to the brain, leading us to trust more in the process. We don't try to force results or control them. We trust because we feel connected to something superior. This state can be taught and become a skill. If you can regulate these states every day and allow your brain and body to function properly before interacting with the world, it's less likely that you'll react to people and situations you face. Your old habits and emotional reactions will have less control over you, and it's less likely that you'll think about a predictable future or a familiar past, since you'll be present in the here and now. It's in this refined state that miracles and the extraordinary happen. We've observed this in our seminars worldwide, where we measure participants' brain and heart responses during meditation. It's surprising. We can see someone's brain in real time on a monitor while they meditate. Each time, we become more skilled at it and can predict when a significant change will occur. We observe small discharges in the field, indicating that something extraordinary is about to happen. If we could see a three-dimensional image of the brain, you'd notice the front part communicating with the back and the right side interacting with the left. We observe how different areas of the brain start synchronizing, signaling that the person is about to enter a new brain state. The union of these polarities represents love. Both hemispheres join, overcoming duality. And by doing this, we experience a sense of unity and integrity. When this happens, people's faces light up with tears of joy because they feel connected to something greater than themselves. This intelligence that animates us is what keeps the heart functioning, digests our food, and circulates through our autonomic nervous system. It's the most powerful healer that exists, and all we need to do is step out of our own way. By doing this, the operator, the tormentor, that personality that tells the body to stay in a limited state, loses its influence. When you're no longer anything or anyone, and time and space no longer matter, the autonomic nervous system begins to restore order where there was once chaos. It starts doing what it knows how to do, establish homeostasis and balance. This allows you to change chemistry, genes, and neurological patterns, moving energy within the body. Often, people claim they had nothing to do with their healing, but that an inner power achieved it. The only thing they needed to do was let go. While we could talk extensively about this, it's fundamental to have the experience. My goal in recent years has been to demystify this reality. Imagine someone gravely ill, presenting themselves before an audience of 500 people and sharing their story of how, over time, their unbalanced emotions generated a disease. But by becoming aware of how this happened, it took them years to break free from this internal narrative. Every day, they decided not to abandon their meditation until they became a new person. This isn't just a philosophical concept. It's a reality embodied by someone who understands their own genetic engineering. When you're in an elevated state, you realize that by doing something different, thinking or acting in a new way, you're disconnecting new neural networks that activate new genes, giving them new meaning. If people can understand the what and the why, the how becomes simpler. Therefore, watching someone stand before an audience of 500 people sharing their journey is no different from seeing Serena Williams play tennis. If you practice tennis and watch how she hits the ball, you'll improve your game. In our seminars, there are people who stand up and tell their stories, allowing others to understand they can achieve the same. Just as an infection can spread disease in a community, health and well-being can be equally contagious. When a group of people gathers and understands the purpose of what they're doing, it's a ripe moment for sharing experiences. Let's talk about some of these stories. Some people take years, while others achieve changes in 3 weeks. I remember a woman who handed me an envelope as she left the stage in Barcelona a few years ago and asked me to read it when I got to the dressing room. When I arrived, I opened the envelope and read her profound story. I invited her to stand up and share it with the entire audience. She was a psychotherapist from the Netherlands, a very intelligent woman. One Sunday morning, while taking a shower, her husband said goodbye to their 2 children. Amidst this situation, he shouted something, and while she bathed, he jumped from the tallest tower in Amsterdam, committing suicide. That's a highly stressful event. When she received the news, she experienced the same emotions anyone would. In such an impactful and traumatic situation, she was suffering, full of pain, resentment, guilt, confusion, and anger, going through the whole range of emotions, all triggered by stress hormones. This event significantly changed her biology. She didn't know how to handle her emotional reaction, leading her to a prolonged mood state. If she kept reliving the event in her mind, her body and brain generated the same chemistry as if it were happening again. Her organism was conditioned to the past, reliving the experience 50 to 100 times a day, making her body believe the situation was repeating over and over. Thus, she moved from a simple mood state to a constant temperament. When asked why she was so irritable, she responded by recounting the story, essentially saying, "I'm like this because of something that happened 4 months ago." If we continue like this for a long period, these emotions drive our thoughts and limit us to thinking only about what we feel. Our feelings become our way of thinking, and we get stuck in our biology. One day, a woman woke up and discovered she was paralyzed from the waist down. She couldn't get out of bed. They took her to the hospital, where MRI scans and other tests were performed, but nothing was found. She was diagnosed with neuritis and ended up bedridden, unable to work or care for her children. Her mother had to move in with her. Without a job, she had no money, and her stress levels increased. As this happened, the same stress chemicals hit her brain and threw her body off balance, incorrectly activating her genes. In the following months, she developed huge ulcers on the mucous membranes of her body, in her mouth, throat, stomach, bladder, and vagina. The ulcers were so large that she couldn't eat, and her body was completely chemically imbalanced, full of pain, spiraling downward. When she finally realized her condition, she went to the doctor and was diagnosed with esophageal cancer. Faced with this diagnosis, she felt even more stress and fear, realizing her children could lose their mother. She attended one of our workshops And I remember it particularly because she arrived with crutches and in a wheelchair, sitting on the left side of the room. It was an introductory course, and she intellectually understood that she could make changes, but knew she faced a significant challenge. She was excited about the content and information since, as a psychotherapist, she understood this language. Months later, she returned to a workshop in Connecticut, north of New York City, accompanied by 2 friends. The audience was incredible at that retreat, and I pushed her a bit further than usual. She had a major breakthrough for the first time in over a year. She felt like herself, having a clear vision of her future. She wasn't visualizing anything at that moment, but suddenly she had a very clear vision that moved her emotionally. She went home and began meditating every day, realizing she was regulating new genes and reducing those related to her illness. She understood she needed to knock on the door of her genetics daily. It's important to note that even though there were days she didn't want to meditate, she did it anyway. There were moments when she doubted and didn't believe it was possible, but she continued with her practice. Over time, by doing our meditations daily, she began to notice significant changes in her health. One day, in front of the audience, she said, "I've just seen my doctor, and I have no evidence of esophageal cancer. I have no ulcers in the mucous membranes of my body, except for a small scar at the back of my throat. I have no paralysis, no numbness, and haven't lost my motor function. Additionally, I have a new husband." At that moment, I knew she had acquired a new personality and a new personal reality. The disease resided in the old personality. But now she was literally a different person. I asked how she felt recalling that past event, and she responded that it had been her best teacher. When I inquired if she felt any emotion thinking about that experience, she replied that she didn't. I explained that memory devoid of emotional charge translates into wisdom. That's the true goal, to be ready to start a new life. She told me she was in love with her life and decided not to stray from her meditations until she truly felt passionate about life. A materialist who defines reality through their senses might think there's no reason to be in love with life. This woman had lost her husband, her job, and couldn't care for her child. Moreover, she was paralyzed and suffered from cancer. With all these conditions, however, she firmly decided to condition her body for the future, not the past. In front of the audience, she declared, "I'm so in love with life." To which I responded, "Of course you are. You created it from that place of love for life." Thanks to her decisions to overcome and not be defined by the past, she worked on her personal growth every day. Each day, she managed to advance a little more, shedding the limited version of herself to create a larger version. She undressed the masks, emotions, and facades that blocked the flow of her inner intelligence. Each day, she connected with the power that resided within her. Over time, she began receiving the correct instructions and transformed her health state, moving from being very ill to enjoying optimal health. For me, she represents the light in this world and is closer to the truth than any scholar or academic. Since she lived her experience, thanks to her testimony, many people suffering from ovarian cancer and other conditions found the strength to transform their lives. You mentioned that there were days when she didn't want to meditate, but did it anyway. That's a big question. How do you fight against pain? It's something we can philosophize about. But when you're sick, the hardest part is thinking beyond your emotions. If you can't do that, your body ends up controlling your life. There's nothing wrong with that, but consider someone who has mismanaged their energy, emotions, and lifestyle over the last decade and, as a result, develops a condition. This constant imbalance hits the genetics and turns a gene into a disease. They took 10 years to create this condition, and we need to be realistic. It will take time to return to knocking on the door of genetics and reprogramming that gene differently. Don't expect to do your meditation and heal 2 days later. It's a process that requires repetition, understanding, reorganization, and relearning. You also need to fill your brain with knowledge and stay coherent to start noticing results. It's like fishing. When you catch a fish, the moment you feel a change in your body, something starts to transform. That's all you need. Once you experience that sensation, you start correlating what you do internally with the external effect, and you'll feel more passionate, sincere, and secure in your practice. The beauty of all this is that you can change your brain waves and transcend your analytical mind through daily meditation practice. When you reach that state, you detach from the concerns of the present moment, forget your obligations, relationships, and what you did yesterday. In that instant, you're no longer a face, a body, or an identity. You're pure consciousness. At that moment, your consciousness merges with a higher consciousness, uniting your conscious mind and your subconscious mind. You find yourself in a system that allows true change. If you practice the skill of transcending your body through daily meditation, especially when you're sick, it's crucial that you learn to go beyond your understanding of the physical being. If you can achieve this, your body will stop being the mind, and you'll be able to start reprogramming very slowly. Though these effects may take time, they'll require patience. By training your ability to regulate and modify your brain waves, you'll be able to overcome your identity and transcend space and time. If you do this correctly, when it's time to heal your body, your ability to go beyond matter will be crucial. No matter how sick you are, each time you manage to transcend your body, you become a consciousness imparting energy and educating your body from a place broader than the physical. To demystify this process, training is necessary. When people manage to go beyond themselves, that's when the magic emerges. At first, it can be complicated because you're in a physical body. If you start meditating and wonder if you feel better, you risk returning to your old identity. You shouldn't evaluate your state in those moments. It's a process that requires development and awareness and takes time. We've seen this so many times that I can affirm it's a law. You might ask me about the placebo effect. How is it possible that some patients who receive a placebo, a saline injection, or a simulated treatment experience improvements? A percentage of these patients, by accepting and believing in the idea that they're receiving real treatment, program their autonomic nervous system to create an internal pharmacy of chemicals that match what they believe they're taking. The question that arises is it the inert substance that heals, or is it the innate ability of the body to heal itself? Healing doesn't come from the placebo, but from the thought. The placebo acts as a conditioner, representing a future possibility. Some of these patients begin to feel inspired, enthusiastic, and full of hope, combining a clear intention with an elevated emotion. At that moment, they shift from the biology of their past to the biology of their future. So the question is, do you really need medicine or simulated treatment to reach a new state of being? Instead of choosing what you already know to help heal yourself, you can opt for the unknown, a new potential in the quantum field without needing to leave yourself. Revisit this unknown repeatedly until your biology understands it. It's entirely possible that the same effects are achieved, and the answer is a resounding yes. In studies on depression, it was found that 8% of patients who take a placebo respond, similarly to those using antidepressants. This means they're activating their own internal pharmacy of antidepressants, and their body, along with their nervous system, acts as the best pharmacist in the world. It's true that in these studies, patients needed to take the placebo over a period of 6 to 8 weeks, combining it daily with a clear intention and an elevated emotion, to reach a new state of being. Accepting, editing, and surrendering to the idea that they're receiving real treatment starts programming their biology for change. If it takes 6 weeks to cure depression and move a person from one state of being to another, this gives us a good benchmark. The process can take between 6 and 8 weeks if done daily for something to truly change. The beauty of the placebo lies in the fact that it's based on belief, and most of these beliefs come from past experiences. Some of these experiences have marked us neurologically and conditioned us emotionally. We tend to think and feel based on the biology of our past experiences. How you think and how you feel creates a state of being. If you combine thought and feeling, you get what we call attitude. Positive thoughts connected to good feelings generate a good attitude, while negative thoughts related to negative emotions produce a bad attitude. Attitude is a temporary state that can be positive in the morning and negative in the afternoon. If you take attitudes and chain them together, you generate a belief. That belief is nothing more than a thought that repeats over and over until it becomes fixed in your brain. Beliefs mimic our emotions, and when challenged, we usually don't feel good. Thus, the combination of thoughts and feelings over time conditions the body to subconsciously become the mind. All beliefs are therefore subconscious states of being. People often aren't aware of the beliefs they hold about medicine, God, relationships, love, or gender since they've been programmed subconsciously. If you gather each belief and chain them together, you get what we call personality, which determines the decisions we make, the things we create in our lives, the relationships we establish, and even our behaviors. If you want to study someone's beliefs, observe their behaviors. They'll provide a lot of information about that person. If you're programmed to believe you need something external to heal, that belief becomes a reality. It's natural to think you need something to help you heal. For example, if you believe you need a flu vaccine to avoid getting sick, you're likely to get sick regardless of receiving the vaccine simply because that's your belief. When I wrote about the placebo effect, I was fascinated by the concept because I realized how deeply we're programmed unconsciously. Studying the placebo reveals numerous studies repeatedly showing that our innate ability to heal ourselves is a fact. For example, if you take a group of asthmatics and administer a drug that induces asthma while giving others a treatment that counteracts it, if you give a person the drug that provokes asthma but tell them it's the cure, more than half of the group won't experience bronchoconstriction symptoms. In other words, the power of thought surpasses that of the chemical. If people start demystifying this concept and realize they possess the innate ability to heal and can work by regulating their internal states, they can produce their own pharmacy of chemicals for pain, depression, and inflammation. Recently, we conducted an impressive study at one of our advanced workshops in Tacoma, Washington. We selected 120 people to measure circulating cortisol levels and a chemical called immunoglobulin IgA. When you're stressed and unbalanced, cortisol levels tend to increase, peaking around 8 a.m. In the study, we measured cortisol and IgA levels in these 120 people at a specific time in the afternoon. We conducted all measurements at the beginning of the workshop, and after 4.5 days of training, starting to measure them to observe the epigenetic and chemical changes resulting from the internal work done. Most participants showed a decrease in cortisol levels, indicating they were no longer in survival mode or under stress. The most significant finding was that IgA levels increased from 51 to 83, which is the upper limit considered high. Some people reached up to 100. IgA is the body's primary defense against bacteria and viruses, being even more effective than a flu vaccine. When you generate emotions like gratitude, appreciation, care, kindness, or inspiration, your body transforms. you activate your immune system, which begins restoring order in the body, releasing various chemicals. Just 10 minutes of an elevated emotion are enough for these chemicals to remain active throughout the day. In our workshops, we start each meditation cultivating elevated emotions and learning to maintain them. We measure this process using a heart rate variability monitor, observing participants' hearts while they meditate. Interestingly, most of them manage to generate cardiac coherence, creating a strong electromagnetic field and producing significant chemical and physiological changes. Their internal environment became more resistant and ordered than the external environment. If you practice this regularly, you're less likely to be exposed to opportunistic bacteria that wait for an opportunity to compromise your immune system. It's not strange for a group of people in the same office to get sick simultaneously. This happens because the immune system is affected by collective stress. At this moment, if people are provided with the science and understanding of the placebo, they can be taught how it works. The placebo effect is based on 3 aspects. First, conditioning, when some people are given a pill and they experience a change in their internal state, and then receive another pill that alleviates their pain, even if the latter is inert. By conditioning, the body produces the same chemicals it would with an active drug. The second aspect is expectation. Anticipating that something will happen, your body physiologically prepares for the event. Between 40% and 50% of patients diagnosed with cancer who are informed they will experience nausea during their first chemotherapy session actually experience nausea even before arriving at the session. Similarly, this same 40% to 50% of people can improve on their way to work by anticipating something positive. The third aspect is attributing meaning to the experience. If patients are told that the receptors of their nerve cells must capture serotonin at the synapse, the chemical that helps regulate mood and alleviate depression, a context can be provided about why they're taking this pill. The results will be more positive if you explain to people how to condition their bodies to a new mindset known as the placebo effect. If you teach people to choose the best instead of focusing on the worst that could happen and to embrace this option emotionally, it can generate well-being, healing, and health. By giving meaning to what they do, using science as a contemporary model to explain this process is crucial. It's not enough for them to merely understand intellectually. It's also important that they share their experiences with someone close. In our workshops, participants learn and then explain this information to others. If you can communicate this, it connects to your brain and you're installing a new programming. We establish the right conditions and environment for them to practice. If they can align their behavior with their emotions, they must experience some kind of transformation. We measure these transformations repeatedly, and they've become a scientific fact. We shouldn't wait for science to give us permission to act unconventionally. It's necessary to step out of the established norms and do something extraordinary, repeating these actions until science becomes interested in studying them and changes its paradigms. This approach isn't normal or natural. We're exploring the supernatural and challenging conventional models. It requires courage, especially if you've received a diagnosis indicating you have 6 months to live and feel you need to put your affairs in order. We know many people who, after receiving a discouraging prognosis, refuse to accept that reality. Instead of programming their autonomic nervous system for that fate, they decided they could change their situation. Many of them no longer suffer from the illness or have lived more than 2 years since then, continuing their path. It's essential that people reclaim their power in this age of information, where ignorance is a choice. 20 or 30 years ago, if a doctor gave you a diagnosis and treatment, most people accepted what they were told without questioning. Nowadays, upon receiving a diagnosis, many people search online, examine their condition, and explore conventional and alternative treatments. Often they know more about alternative therapies than some doctors. Returning to the consultation, if you're not familiar with them or think they won't work, the patient considers seeking another doctor who supports their lifestyle and desire for change. It's important to emphasize to our students that measurements must be taken during this process. If you decide to embark on this journey, it's not about denying information, but observing and demonstrating your progress. Measurements will be taken to determine if you've improved or if you need a more radical approach to achieve specific changes. It's not about negligence or ignoring information. It's crucial to see if you can generate effects and measure them to get feedback. Constant feedback over time lets us know if we're starting to make changes and if we're continuing to advance so that the person can experience a radical transformation. You mentioned that you're concerned that scientific research is often influenced by personal and market interests. You might ask why we shouldn't accept a diagnosis from someone in a white coat, perhaps because they don't have all the information since they were trained by a pharmaceutical company. I have nothing against pharmaceutical companies or medications. They've done remarkable work helping people recover their health and restore their chemical balance. The main challenge is that we're often not told the truth about the power we truly possess. If all available information were revealed, fewer products and drugs would be sold. This leads to questioning the efficacy of medications and reflecting on which studies are published and which are discarded for not showing solid evidence of their efficacy. For example, out of 38 articles written about a particular drug, only 18 or 19 are published, while the rest that don't show favorable results never see the light. Today, information is more accessible and people have the ability to inform themselves. We accept, believe, and surrender to thoughts aligned with our emotional state, but we shouldn't accept or surrender to those that aren't. When a patient receives a diagnosis of diseases like rheumatoid arthritis, multiple sclerosis, cancer, or diabetes, fears, sadness, and pains often arise. Although they try to think positively and say they'll overcome the disease, if they still feel fear, their thoughts can't translate into actions because they're not in tune with their emotional state. For a person to change their emotional state, it's crucial to reach a state of gratitude. Gratitude naturally expresses itself when we receive something valuable. As this intelligence manifests more in our minds, we move from a selfish state to a more selfless one. The transformation is noticeable. As we free ourselves from the emotions anchoring us to the past and move from a state of matter to a state of energy, we begin to release this energy, opening our hearts and feeling connected to something greater. In this state of fullness, we feel the need to share this joy because it's a natural impulse to want to give when we feel complete. For me, this is the natural state of being. Disease cannot coexist in a state of fullness, and I firmly believe everyone can reach these states of well-being in their lives, making them constant experiences. Accessing the supernatural requires us to start acting in ways that may initially seem unnatural. At first, change can feel uncomfortable, a sense of unfamiliarity and uncertainty about what lies ahead. Many people rush back to their familiar feelings and behaviors, seeking comfort in the familiar. However, the best way to predict the future is to create it. The ability to create from the unknown can bring about amazing changes in our lives. It is supernatural to give when others feel needy, to show compassion in times of anger, and to express love and strength when fear surrounds those around us. If we continue to do what at first seems unnatural, it will eventually become second nature. We are at a pivotal moment in history when people seek answers and secretly believe in themselves, as well as in the infinite possibilities that life offers us. It is at this moment that our will aligns with this inner intelligence, and when our mind connects with something greater, Our love for life harmonizes with the love for life around us. We will always answer this call. And there you have it, the journey of meditation and the transformation it can bring to your life. As we learned from Joe Dispenza, changing the way we think and feel is not only possible, it is essential to reprogramming our reality. By practicing meditation, you not only observe your thoughts, but you begin to detach yourself from the emotions that keep you stuck in the past. You have the power to create a new version of yourself, aligning your mind, body, and spirit. If you commit to integrating meditation into your daily routine, you will not only begin to notice changes in your mind and emotions, but also in your life as a whole. Remember, transformation does not happen overnight, but with each small decision you make, with each moment in which you choose to connect with your true essence. So, what are you waiting for? Take the first step on this journey of self-knowledge and transformation. Leave a comment below, sharing your experiences with meditation or your expectations for this practice. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and activate the notification bell so you don't miss any content that can change your life. Thank you for watching, and until the next video.